Are you someone looking to travel internationally with your family at an affordable price or by utilizing credit card points? Well, keep listening as we speak to one of our friends and fellow physicians about how she has been able to take amazing vacations with her family of four and give you some tips on how you can do the same. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Leisha, can we talk about life insurance for a second? Because I feel like this is one of those things that people either avoid or overcomplicate.
Exactly. And honestly, a lot of us think we need these big, complicated, expensive policies when in reality, most people just need a solid term life insurance policy that actually protects their family.
And that's why we love working with PKA Insurance Group. They're independent brokers, which means that they're not tied to one company. They shop across all major carriers to find you the best option.
And what I really appreciate is that they're not trying to upsell you. They'll actually tell you what you do need, what you don't need, which is rare in the insurance world.
Exactly. Whether you're getting coverage for the first time or you already have a policy, they'll review what you have and let you know if it's solid or if there's something better or more affordable out there.
So if you've been putting off life insurance or wondering if you actually have the right policy or if your current policy is a good fit for you, this is your sign.
Reach out to PKA Insurance Group at pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018 to get started. And don't forget to tell him that we sent you. Also, the link is right in the show notes for your convenience. So click the link and get started today. Well, Leisha, it's been a minute. Tell the people what's going on in your life. Give us an update.
I am currently trying to figure out how I can salvage my trip to the Maldives. And I think I've figured this out. The Maldives has been like a bucket list trip for me. And I sort of spent like hours of my time planning this luxurious stay and how I was going to do this at an affordable price, like in terms of just securing the hotel, which we are hopefully going to stay at the Waldorf in the Maldives, which is like one of the most luxurious hotels there. And it's thousands of dollars per night. And so I was able to figure out a way to get that at a much cheaper price, utilizing points and things and securing business class flights because we're essentially flying halfway across the world and doing all of these things. I thought I had every facet of the trip booked. And then there were airstrikes in the Middle East. And then I thought, this can't last long. The world will settle down right before my trip. As we're recording this, that has not been the case yet. So I am like, how in the world am I going to go on this vacation without putting myself in danger? On the way to the Maldives, we're actually flying on Singapore Airlines. So we fly from the United States to Singapore and then from Singapore to the Maldives, which avoids the Middle East. So that is fantastic. On our way back, I had actually booked us Q Suites business class bed on the plane, the most luxurious thing on Qatar Airways, which has its hub in Doha, which is in the Middle East. So I was like, oh gosh, how are we going to get back home? And of course, this happened like 2 months before my trip. So like all the best point deals are all snagged and cash prices of flights are thousands of dollars. And I'm like, do I chance it and not book a backup flight? Like, what do I do? And so this is me freaking out, as you can probably hear my voice on this podcast. I've spent the last week trying to find a backup flight. And it just so happens that all the airlines that fly to the Maldives, which there are not that many, like Delta doesn't fly to the Maldives. You know, a lot of the airlines you've thought of, they don't necessarily fly to the Maldives. So all the other airlines, they fly through the Middle East. So I was just like, what do I do? The only airline that does not fly through the Middle East and still goes to the Maldives, from my understanding, is Singapore Airlines. So I had to actually try to call the Singapore Airlines and be like, help me. So anyway, I had been doing that. And I think I'd solved our issue. We might have to fly back in premium economy instead of business class. I know, champagne problems, but I think I have sort of fixed our issue. Still got a few pieces to put into place, but yeah, this is me, my life, freaking out over how I am going to get myself back home safely from this Maldives trip so I can actually take this bucket list trip.
Well, I'm sorry that, life, world events. I mean, okay, we're not going to get into politics, but I'm sorry that it's complicating your travel plans. And I am impressed just at how much time you've spent, how much awareness you have. Of course, you want to arrive home safely and not be stuck in the Middle East. So I definitely understand why you're putting forth all this effort. I'm glad to hear that you may have a solution. It's like, dang, I'm not traveling like Leisha, but I also am not traveling like Leisha. Oh, it sounds like a lot. Well, I know you will have a lot more to share along this tale of the Maldives. You'll have to let us know how it is. I probably will not be traveling there for a period of time, especially hopefully this thing ends soon, this war ends soon, and we can all just get back to some semblance of peace. And hopefully we can find world peace. So many thoughts going through my head right now as I'm talking about current events, but I'm glad that you figured it out or almost figured it out. And I'm sure you'll arrive back safely so you could tell us about all of your adventures on this podcast.
Yes, yes. And I'm very excited for us to delve into our conversation today with Dr. Nneoma because she is also going to give us some tips, right, about how she's been able to travel internationally with her family. I'm not sure if she's gone to the Maldives, but I know that she has gone to Japan with her family and gone to like Turks and Caicos and gone to different parts of Europe and Africa. And so just having somebody else who has been able to secure amazing flights and hotel stays, not only for themselves and a partner, but for themselves, their partner, and their kids. I'm like, oh, yeah, we got to bring this person on. So I'm very excited about this conversation that we're getting ready to have with her. All right. So we have a treat for our audience today. Joining us on our podcast is Dr. Nneoma, who is a physician, but is coming on here today mainly to talk about her other passion, which is traveling. So her and I kind of share that in common. We both love to travel and we both love to travel in style, okay, in luxury without paying luxury prices. She, unlike myself, is married and has children, and she has mastered the art of being able to travel with a family to all of these different really cool places around the world. And so we have invited her here on our podcast so that she can share her expertise with our audience. Dr. Yola, thank you so much for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing how you got into this sort of points and miles.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. I've been a fan right from the first intro and the first podcast you guys released. So it's such a treat, yeah, to actually be a guest on your podcast. So I found out about credit card points and mile when Devon Gimbal was a guest on Dr. Una's podcast because I'm a podcast junkie. The first time I listened, I was like, what is this? And then a few weeks later, I went back and listened again. I'm like, oh, that was when I had the aha moment. And then I joined the Facebook group and went down the rabbit hole, and I've just not come out since then. And that was in 2023. It's just life changing how your regular expenses can truly make so much memories when you travel.
Well, I love that. And I was just sitting on my couch talking to my husband about you. And I'm like, she messaged me like, hey, have you taken your trip? I'm like, oh, thank you, Dr. Nneoma, for holding me accountable. So we love you. We appreciate you for listening from day one. And really, really just want to say thank you. I also want you to have an opportunity to introduce yourself, not just how you got started, but who are you? What type of physician are you? Tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm an internist. I'm a board certified internist, also practices obesity and lifestyle medicine, currently living in Houston, Texas. And I'm married. I have two young children, ages 4 and 6 currently. So that's usually who I travel with. Occasionally, I travel alone.
Awesome. And I know that you've been kind of doing this points and miles. I've stalked your Instagram, seen the luxurious trips that you take. So I live vicariously through you and Leisha's travel. But for you, Leisha is a single girl. She doesn't have to buckle anyone in a car seat. I have two little ones just about the same ages as yours. So I am really excited to have this conversation about families. First question is, how should families actually think differently about earning points compared to solo travelers? Is there anything that families should do differently?
Yeah, so families, generally just having a family typically translates to being busy. And that means that having a system at which you earn points, because you do have to earn a lot more points compared to a solo traveler. So having a system in place that is easy to use, because there's no point having some advanced system that you just can't use. So whatever system works for you, that will always be the best situation. Most families, we all have to eat. So thinking of in general, okay, what are your expenses typically? Definitely that will be grocery, maybe gas for those that have to buy gas, and then daycare or school if your kids are in private school, depending on their ages. So thinking about what your common expenses are, and also don't forget taxes. Those are great point earning opportunities. So thinking about those and then thinking of the foundational card that you have that will consistently earn you points on those expenses, because those are usually recurring expenses. So that's how I recommend that families actually think about earning points. And also, don't try to overcomplicate it. You don't have to pick up every flashy card. Just start from the basics and then you can gradually work your way up, because you don't want this to become a part-time job if it's not your passion.
Yeah. Okay. So what I hear you saying is, first of all, you need to have a system and you need to keep it simple. So I love those two things. And just to kind of catch our audience up, we're talking about this whole points and miles thing, right? How can you and your family or you and your travel companions get to these different places around the world without paying enormous prices? We're kind of talking about here is utilizing credit card points to our advantage, right? So accumulating credit card points and then being able to redeem them for flights and hotel stays and things like that for your family. And what you were talking about is that first part of how can you accumulate the points? And you're
Mhm.
talking about, hey, you know what? Yes, it's more work involved, right? If you've got to plan a trip for one person or two people, that's vastly different than trying to plan a trip for four people, right? And trying to find four people flights and trying to get hotels and all of those sorts of things. And so it's going to require more points inherently because you've got more people traveling with you. And what I hear you saying is, yes, it requires more points, but by virtue of having a family with children, you also have more expenses. And what you got to be skilled at is putting those expenses on credit cards that will allow you to accumulate points a lot faster. So, yes,
Mhm.
your trips require more points, but also you acquire more points by virtue of having more expenses. And you just named some of those common expenses, right? Taxes, you're in a high income family. You talked about daycare and childcare and gas and food. All of those things cost money. And so being able to put those expenses on a credit card that will then accumulate more points is something that will help you out. So I appreciate that in terms of the points accumulation part. I think that's very key. But I wondered if you had some general tips and strategies. I mean, you talked about a system. Do you mind kind of sharing about what your system is, particularly on the redemption side of things?
Okay, I guess I'm at this intermediate or advanced, so my earning structure has changed. But one thing I also want to mention is for families or for beginners, always focusing on what we call transferable currencies.
Hmm.
Those are usually like American Express, Chase, Build, Capital One, City, because when you have those transferable currencies, it gives you more opportunities to transfer it to a lot more airlines and hotels and not just getting it in one fixed point. Because quite often when people hear about points and miles, they just think of, oh, these airline co-branded cards or these hotel co-branded cards. That might happen at some point, but initially for most people, focusing on transferable currencies will give you the biggest bang for your buck. So that's very important. And then for redemption, for a family, the log street means different things for families. It could mean actually like traveling business class, staying in five-star hotels. It could also mean you would prefer a direct flight or you're okay flying economy. When I say direct, I mean like nonstop, or it has to be from your home airport. But in general, flexibility is important. And that flexibility could be, are you okay flying out of any airport or are you okay arriving at any airport? And also having some wiggle room in the departure date. Because if, for example, you're like, oh, I need to be in Amsterdam on June 24th. Well, that is different from I need to be in Europe in summer or I need to be in Amsterdam in summer. That flexibility really does help open up opportunities rather than having a fixed date that you have to arrive somewhere. The other thing too that helps me when booking flights for multiple people, at least three or more people, there are some airlines that are more likely to have multiple seats available, especially in business class. For economy, it's typically easier to find multiple seats, but some airlines are more likely to have those spaces available, such as Virgin Atlantic, British Airways, Aeroplan, and Aeroplan is also called Air Canada. Generally, you're not flying Aeroplan, but you might be flying like Lufthansa, or you could be flying United, or because they're all in the same airline alliance. Yeah, so focusing on those airlines, American Airlines, Alaska, those also often have multiple seats. So those are usually where I typically start from. I mean, compared to something like A&E that will release one or two seats, like that would generally not be applicable to families, especially when they are young kids that you can split the flights or the cabins.
Okay, yeah. Well, I just wanted to interject here because I think what you said was just so key. Yes, earlier you said you need a system and you got to keep it simple. But what I'm hearing you saying now is you got to be flexible, right? If you're traveling with three or more people, you've got to be flexible. And that flexibility might mean traveling maybe not on a weekend. Most of us think about traveling on a Friday or a Saturday, but maybe you might have to be flexible and fly out on a Tuesday, right? Being flexible in terms of what airport you're flying out of. And then I hear you saying, hey, before we even start redeeming points, you have to make sure you have the kind of points that you can even utilize in this way, which you classified as transferable points, making sure that you have an American Express card or a Citi card or Capital One or Bilt or what have you, so that you can accumulate the kind of points that you can even utilize in this way. And then I think you talked about international airlines. And I think this is really important because I think for some people who maybe don't travel internationally a ton, or maybe on the newer end of this points and miles space, they may not be as used to international airlines. Maybe they've only flown with Delta or with United or with American Airlines or with Southwest, right? And so
Yes.
when you say airlines like Virgin Atlantic, British Airways, Aeroplan, they're thinking, what are you even talking about? I've never even flown on these airlines. And I think we have to realize that even if you're new to this space, our American airlines are not the only airlines, right? And so just like we have our main kind of airlines that we use here in America, Europe has its main airlines and Asia has its main airlines. And when you're traveling internationally, especially, you need to be open to using these other airlines, right? And so Delta has partners in other parts of the world, and one of their partners is Virgin Atlantic. British Airways is another very major airline based in London, but it also has airline partners. And so just being open to these international airlines is what I hear you saying that's very important because some airlines may be more likely to release these points based seats on flights, right? If you're traveling with four people, you've not only got to figure out how to accumulate enough points to redeem for four people, but now you got to find the seats on the airplane.
Yes.
And if you're redeeming them using points, airlines may not release 100 seats that you can redeem via points. It may
Yes.
only be two seats or three seats or four seats in business class. Economy, maybe they release a few more, but if certain airlines are only going to release four seats in business class or 10 seats in economy class that you can redeem via points, you need to know what those airlines are. And so I appreciate you kind of talking us through like, hey, if you want to travel with your family internationally, you need to probably be looking at the airlines most likely to release enough seats. And what I hear you saying is Virgin Atlantic, Aeroplan, Air Canada, British Airways, Air France, or KLM. I know that's a big one. And so if you're listening to this, you're like, I've never flown on any of those airlines before. You got to expand your view
Yes.
so that you can then open your mind to, okay, I need to maybe start looking into some of those airlines because I might be able to get where I want to go with a much better deal. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And I know you were about
Yes.
to hop into your hotel.
Yeah, actually, more of what you said. And even if you're more focused on domestic airlines, just broadening out from what you said, you can actually book those domestic airlines through those international airlines, especially in the same alliance in general. And that is because most times it's much less points to book through the international airline partner. A few examples. So for like United Airline, you can book United through Air Canada or Aeroplan. You can also book United through Singapore. And sometimes I even really like Singapore because it actually has much lower taxes and fees and also very favorable points. You can also book American Airlines through British Airways. So that's another reason why thinking beyond the domestic airlines that we're all familiar with is important because more often than not, you have a lot more, like be able to stretch out your points further. Also, talking about Flying Blue. So Flying Blue is like an umbrella name for Air France and KLM. And this one is a game changer for families, especially if your kids are between ages 2 to 12, because it offers 25% discounts for those kids. So that is super helpful. And it's also one of the airlines that actually would release multiple seats, whether it's business class or economy or so. It's a really good one for families because of that discount. Because 25% off discount, I mean, that's really awesome, especially if you ever layer on like a transfer bonus and they realize it's not a lot of points to fly your family abroad or wherever. So that's one to keep in mind. And then for hotels, usually domestically, like within the US, the occupancy is much less of an issue compared to when you're traveling abroad. They are a lot more strict. Plus, you also don't want to just appear there with your family of five or something. Meanwhile, the room you booked can only accommodate three people and maximum. And the reason for those strict limits is really the occupancy rules or maybe local regulations or the fire code. So sometimes there's not much we can do. However, there are still a few options. One, I mean, of course, you could book two rooms, but before we even get to the two rooms part, it's worth calling the hotel. An example is when I was booking Park Hyatt Kyoto. Generally, they don't take up to four people in one room. That's not common. But because my kids were young and I called and I told them the ages of my kids, and because they were a certain age, I think maybe below 6, or I don't remember the age limit, they allowed the four of us to stay in one room. I know we don't like calling, but sometimes it does pay off in this hobby. So definitely it's worth calling to find out, oh, okay, can they accommodate, or maybe can you pay like $100 more a night to maybe get a sofa bed, but you can explore those options. The other thing is there's something called Hyatt Family Plan rates. This doesn't apply to all Hyatt hotels, but what it's for is, so assuming you need to book two rooms, right? The first room can be paid in either cash or points. It doesn't matter. But the second room, which is the higher family plan rate, you get 50% off the cash amount. So that one has to be paid in cash. But that's also a way to, further stretch your budget or make sure that everyone will have enough space, or just when the rules are just strict. Something else that you can also do is using what we call a suite upgrade award. That really opens up the opportunity to book you and your family into a suite, because most times suites are often like bigger than the usual rooms. And that's why that award is very valuable for those in the Hyatt ecosystem. Then one thing that also helps families is, so when you're booking on Hyatt is very loved in the point amount world, but sometimes there's the option of booking points and cash, and that can make sense when one, you have to book two rooms, or maybe you don't have a lot of points and you're okay paying some cash. That is also a really good way. Sometimes you can even book like a premium suite or a suite that way. So you book, let me say, maybe 9,000 points and some cash. So those are also other ways to help make your family comfortable and work with the hotel policies.
Let me tell y'all, I mean, this is a master class. I see Leisha, she's taking notes down at the bottom, and I'm just reading the notes. I'm just trying to listen and understand all at the same time. So, listeners, if you feel like me, if you feel like Nneoma and Leisha are in their own world of managing this stuff, you are in good company, and we're going to get you right. So, we've heard about some airlines. Nneoma, when I think about our conversation, you're like, oh, set up a plan or a username and password for these companies. I still haven't done that task yet. I'm just going to be honest. I still have not done that task. I'm being vulnerable here, but I assume that's the first step because that's what you told me.
Yes.
Like, what would be the first step for someone who has young children like us? You were talking about Flying Blue. I'm like, oh, I could get a discount. Yes, Lord. So what is the first step for families, for mothers, for fathers who are listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, I want to do all of this. I want to be able to use the airline, use the hotels, but I don't know how to get started. What would you recommend?
Yes, I agree with creating the username, and it's usually free for all the airlines and hotels. I'm not aware of anyone you have to pay for. So it does help to create those, and it's actually very important to create it before you're ready to redeem, because what happens is, assuming you find the flights that you want to book and then you create your account and you immediately transfer, more often than not, that triggers fraud. And then that delays things, and then it can go downhill from there. So it's important to actually have those accounts created. So I'm glad you brought that up because that is very key. And to make it less overwhelming, it's okay to start for you to be the one to create the account, just you, because you can book for anybody, really. Generally, for most airlines, you can book flights for anyone. Just a few exceptions, like JAL, that's a little more complicated. But for your family, for almost every airline, you can book it. So you can just start by creating those accounts for yourself, because I know it can be a huge undertaking to like create for yourself, your spouse, and your kids. I did that, but I did that during a period I wasn't working. I was just took time off work. So it was one of the things I was able to do. And yeah, it does take time. So you can make it less daunting by just creating for yourself and then gradually take it from there. And then Talking about redeeming. So, assuming you want to travel, generally the best case scenario is actually searching for those flights on the airlines directly. But before that, there are like so many award search tools, like there's so many, and that really helps streamline things and just makes it easier for beginners to at least start to attempt this process. The host of them, I generally use Seats.aero, but that's not beginner friendly. Points here is quite beginner friendly. I've only used that a few times, but it's really beginner friendly. But irrespective of what you find on those award search tools, always confirm on the airline's website directly before you transfer those points. Because once those points move from your American Express, your Chase, your Capital One, once it moves to that airline account, it's stuck there, so to speak. So there's a way to reverse that. So that's why it's important to make sure that, okay, the flights you actually want to book are available, and then you can move the points over.
Okay, well, I love that. I think just to summarize some of the things that you were saying on the flight side, and then we'll get back to the hotel side. But on the flight side, just to reiterate, it's hey, you got to be open to some international airlines, especially if you're traveling internationally. You might actually find much better deals. And what I heard you say is even if you're traveling domestically, right? Let's say you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa. Sometimes you can book the exact same flight on a partner airline for much fewer points. For example, Delta is in a partnership with Virgin Atlantic. And so most people, they go to Google Flights or they go to delta.com and they find the flight and they pay for the flight. But what they may not know is that you could actually go to Virgin Atlantic website and maybe you see that same flight for much cheaper or for much fewer points because they're in an alliance. So you can take that same Delta flight, just booking it on a partner website and pay less money or fewer points for it.
Yes.
So being open to those international airlines, I hear you saying, hey, you've got to create, they're called loyalty accounts with these different airlines, which Brittany admitted she hadn't yet done, but we're going to say on her and try to get her to do it. And I don't want you to feel overwhelmed or anybody listening to this to feel overwhelmed, right? There's like a gazillion airlines. So it just seems like homework that no one wants to do.
Yes.
But at the same time, what you've got to do, it's very simple. You just got to create a username and a password for these different airlines so that you have a loyalty account that allows you to accumulate points and miles through those accounts because you cannot redeem a flight unless you have a loyalty account. And you can't even be like, well, I'm just going to wait until I see a flight that I like and then I'll create the account because some of the airlines require you to have an account for 30 days, 60
Yes.
days, 90 days before they even allow you to redeem a flight. So what you don't want to do is find this amazing flight, have all these points booked, and then can't redeem them because you didn't create the loyalty account. And oftentimes you can't even search for points flights without the loyalty account. So you don't have to start with, okay, today I'm going to tackle airlines 1 through 20. And then next month I'll tackle airlines 21 through 40. Maybe start with most common airlines
Yes.
that are more likely to release more seats and start making the loyalty account. And for some people, now I don't have a family, Nneoma, you'll have to let us know what you do. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to create a loyalty account for yourself, let alone for the other 3 members of your family. And so that is just not what I want to do. So some people, they will just create an account for themselves in these different airlines and then create the loyalty accounts for their kids or for their family maybe a little bit later just to make things a little bit more feasible. But you got to create these loyalty accounts, right? So you literally, for example, if you wanted to create a loyalty account with Virgin Atlantic, you go to virginatlantic.com and then you can create an account, right? You go to Air France or KLM.com, create an account, and they'll tell you to type in a username and a password. And maybe they'll ask you for your name and your date of birth and your age and all of that stuff. But it does not take long. It's just like one of those kind of boring tasks. And then the question is, well, how do I find these flights, right? If it's me, my husband, 3 kids or whatever, how do I find the flights? And some people are fine traveling in economy, even internationally, and that's great. And if you're fine traveling in economy, you're going to find many more seats available. But some of us have gotten a little bougie over the years, right? And we experienced a little business class. We've had the experience of the bed on the plane, and we are not about to be sitting upright for 12 straight hours.
Yes.
But we all know those business class flights are not cheap. You know, when you look at the cash cost of a business class flight, it's $5,000 or $8,000. It's like, you know, I get paid well, but not that well to be spending that much money on the business class flight. And so I think that's where accumulating credit cards points, being able to transfer them into a loyalty account and redeem them that way is much cheaper, but it's going to require a little bit of work. And so I heard you saying, hey, you can check on these award search tools. It's almost like Google Flights where you type in your origination, where you're going, whether you're looking for economy class or premium economy or business class. and the things will pop up and you'll be able to see, oh, okay, Air France has 4 business seats available for 100,000 points apiece, or Virgin Atlantic has 10 seats available for 60,000 points apiece. Or maybe you see something you don't want to see, where it's like, oh, we have 1 business class seat available and it's like 1,000,000 points. You're like, okay, well,
Yes.
that's not going to be the option I go with. You can use some of these award search tools to make your search a little bit easier. But what you said, and I think is really important to emphasize, is you cannot stop there. If you see a great deal, you need to go to the airline website and make sure you see it on the airline website, right? Because what you don't want to do is think you see a deal on these award search platforms and then come to find out it doesn't really exist, right? They're good, but they're not perfect. And so when you see a good deal, you got to confirm it on the airlines. I know you were mentioning different airlines and that sort of thing, but from my personal experience, it's easier to find great deals the earlier you book and the more
Yes.
flexible you are. So I wonder if you can maybe talk a little bit about that side of things.
Yes, yes. So flexibility is key, and the flexibility is in different ways. It could be like your departure airport, where are you flying out from? It could be your arrival airport. So if, for example, you want to go to Japan, which is so popular, are you okay flying into Taipei? Or are you okay flying to Korea? But as long as you take off from your home airport. The other flexibility is the dates. Even being flexible by 1 or 2 weeks can open up a lot more opportunities compared to just having a specific day in mind. The other flexibility is, are you okay splitting your family, especially if it's business class that you really want or first class? Are you okay splitting your families into two, like somebody lives tonight or someone lives from Atlanta and the other person is living from Dallas? Are you okay doing that? Or depending on the ages of your kids, are you okay splitting the cabin? And that means maybe the parents are in business class and the older kids are in premium economy or economy. So that is what flexibility generally looks like when it comes to booking flights for families. I also wanted to mention, so for those who have infants, like kids less than 2 years old, they still do have to pay something. It's not free, and it varies by airlines. For example, Airplan, which is Air Canada, it costs 2,500 points, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Virgin, it varies depending on the cabin you're flying, if it's economy or business class, but I don't think it costs more than 5,000 points to add in lapping funds. And then for like British Airways, Turkish, those ones cost 10% of the number of points needed to book that same seat. And then the remaining, in general, is like 10% of the cash. So there's a possibility that your lap infant can have the most expensive ticket, especially if you're going to have to pay 10% of the cash. So those are just some things to keep in mind when booking with families.
All right. So I want to just ask with your kids, remind me how old your kids are first. And then I want to ask when they're traveling in luxury, right? Where they're having these reclined seats and then they also have to travel economy class. Can you share how they respond to both? Because I want to ensure that, yes, I'm giving my kids experiences that they will enjoy these luxurious experiences, but I also have to be mindful that they may not always be able to pay for it and
Yes.
that they may have to fly economy. And so, how do we manage that as well? How do we manage creating kids that are going to appreciate the luxuries of life, have grit to know that they have to work for it, but also not be like, this place is trash if they have to fly economy?
That's a good question. I would say definitely like, always constantly reminding the kids that even having to get on a plane is luxury. So that frequent reminder. I've also heard some people take their kids during the flight, just take their kids to the economy section for them to also see how other people travel. But for my children, they've been traveling since they were infants, like a couple months old. Like when my daughter was 6 months old, we even traveled to Nigeria. And then fortunately or unfortunately, it was an economy. So yeah, kind of used to both. So they really have no issues. As long as it's travel, they're fine. However, we're getting there, it's okay. So it hasn't necessarily been an issue, but I would say just talking to your kids. And I really like that idea of having to take the kids to the economy section and just showing them what most people travel like. So I think that helps to constantly remind them of how this is truly luxury and a privilege. And depending on the ages too, you can also occasionally split the cabin, right? So and they start to get a taste of it. It could even be premium economy whereby they're closer to business class so that you can still keep an eye on them. Or if they are much older teenagers, you can have them fly economy and just remind them that just the fact they're able to travel is a privilege.
Well, I think that's great to keep in mind. I feel like there's a little debate in the points and miles space regarding should kids be in business class? Like, do you want to get them used to luxurious travel? Are they really going to appreciate it? But at the same time, I've heard on the other side, parents are like, look, they're in business class for my sanity, not necessarily for them. I need them to sleep on this flight because when they have not slept and they are cranky, nobody has a good time.
That is true.
Sometimes the parents will put the kids in business class just because the seat lies flat and the kids can actually sleep so that when they arrive at their destination, they're less cranky. Nobody is jet lagged, or at least they're a lot less jet lagged. And they don't waste a travel day sleeping as soon as they arrive. And so sometimes it just really depends. Obviously, those business class seats cost way more points, right? So
Yes.
how many points do you have? If you're traveling with a family of four and you've got to get four people to somewhere in Europe or Asia and back, that's going to require a lot more points in business class than if you're willing to do economy. And so some people, they're like, look, I don't have 5 million credit card points. Maybe I only have 1 million, or maybe I only have 500,000, in which case economy is my only option. So I think it just really depends on a lot of different factors. Thank you for mentioning that some airlines do give you a discount for kids, that you might have to call ahead of time if you want to add like a lap infant. I think Brittany is beyond that stage, but who knows? I appreciate those tips in terms of airlines and flights. Going back to what you said earlier about hotels, I think this is really interesting to keep in mind. So in America, you get a hotel room, and most hotel rooms will come with 2 queen beds or a king bed. And a lot of families I know, they're like 4 people in a hotel room. That's pretty standard in America. It's not the case when you travel in Europe. It's not the case when you travel in Asia. And so for many families or people listening to this, they're like, I'm just going to have my family 4 in one room. And what they may not realize is Europe, Asia, those other countries, they are much stricter. You cannot just finagle another kid into the room and be like, it's going to be fine. No, they check everybody's passport on check-in. And if they find out that you have more people in the room, they will kick you out. It's a fire hazard. It's a whole thing. You cannot just, I'm going to sneak somebody in. It doesn't work that way internationally. So for a lot of people who have a family of 4 or larger, they run into this issue where the room only seats 3. And so I love what you said about, hey, call ahead of time, see if the hotel is willing to bend the rules for you. Call ahead of time, see if you can pay cash to have an extra person in the room, or pay cash so that they can add a sofa bed, pay cash to upgrade into a suite, which is a much larger room that will accommodate more people. So I appreciate kind of all of those tips. I know you mentioned suite upgrade awards. Somebody probably heard that and their eyes lit up. You can get those things depending on if you have status in a hotel program. And so just like people have airline status, there's a such thing as hotel status. Depending on the tier of hotel status in the hotel chain, sometimes you can get those as rewards or perks for hitting certain status levels that will allow you to sort of upgrade your entire family into a suite during your vacation, which of course sounds great, but maybe a little bit more difficult to do. I heard you kind of talking about Hyatt hotels, and I just wanted to kind of branch a little bit into the hotel space. So for most of us, when we're traveling, maybe you're used to a Hilton hotel or Marriott hotel or a Hyatt hotel. Oftentimes, and I heard you mention this in the points and miles space, a lot of people with families specifically will tend to gravitate towards the Hyatt program. And I know that Hyatt hotels recently did a lot of revisions that were not necessarily in anybody's best interest, right? It's going to cost way more points to book rooms, and it's going to be maybe a little bit more challenging than it was in the past. But one of the, I think the reasons why people like Hyatt hotels so much is because it is a lot easier to travel with a family, right? It's easier to book a hotel room. Those hotel rooms cost fewer points, and you can even book directly into a suite so that you and your family have a lot more room. And Hyatt, their loyalty program is really good. If you're able to accumulate the highest status, they have a lot of really great perks like free breakfast for the entire family, late checkout, and just a lot of things that make your stay with a family a lot better and more feasible and affordable and that sort of thing. But Hyatt doesn't have the biggest footprint, right? You might be traveling abroad and maybe you can't find a Hyatt hotel, or maybe you've never stayed in a Hyatt hotel. And so you're thinking, hey, I really want to stay at the Four Seasons or the St. Regis or whatever other branded hotel. So I wondered if you could kind of talk about how you navigate hotels. Like once you've booked flights for your family, how do you figure out where you're going to stay, and how do you find what hotel rooms might be available?
Yeah, so for my family so far, I've really only focused on Hyatt and Hilton. Again, because one, Hyatt, it requires to dry a lot less points, even though I know it has smaller footprint, it's much less points. So it makes it a little more tolerable to even book 2 rooms, assuming that is what a family needs to do. I focus on Hyatt, and generally Hyatt points are indirectly accumulated by getting like Chase or Guild points. And those are the currencies that will transfer to Hyatt. In fact, it was only Chase up until a few months ago. So that's why Hyatt is really popular. And you also get really good value for your money too. You can book a very expensive hotel. Like for my example, I gave Park Hyatt Kyoto that sometimes cost up to $2,000 a night. And you book it for 45,000 points a night and literally like nothing out of pocket cash wise. So those kinds of values I had to come by. And then for Hilton, I end up having to reschedule the trip, but I have booked South Banks in Turks and Caicos, which is a very luxury property, as luxury as it gets. Like 3 nights stay easily cost $6,000. It is set up for families. It has 2 bedrooms. But in general, most people focus on Hyatt. Now, that being said, since Hyatt has much smaller footprint, of course, compared to like Hilton and Marriott, but in those scenarios, as long as you're okay staying in a quote unquote like lower, should I say like maybe 3-star or 4-star hotel, you're more likely to find those kinds of hotels in the Marriott family. And also don't forget Airbnbs. They're still functional. In fact, some families would even intentionally book Airbnbs either towards the end of the travel or the middle of a long trip so that they can have access to wash and dryer, just try to get a fresh set of clean clothes. So Airbnb is still great, but you just see it as a point earning opportunity. So it's not uncommon for people with much larger families, especially for children or more, to lean towards Airbnb just because it's just easier for everyone to spread out and without shelling out thousands and thousands of points a night. So that's a way to think about it.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Nneoma, for coming on this podcast, for sharing so much. I'm like, oh, I got to look into this. I have my notes here. And I also want to say, before you came on, I was telling my husband that I was recording with you. And I was like, yeah, she had recommended that I set up all of these travel usernames and things of that nature. I think she might be somebody that we could keep on retainer every year to just help us to plan our trip.
I would love to. I want to help you make use of those points.
Please. I know this might be a business that you started or had the idea and haven't. I don't know where you land on your business. I just want to say that if those who are listening, you have a family and you're feeling like I feel like, oh, this sounds great. Nneoma knows all the things. Her kids laying down on seats when they're traveling to Japan and they're living in luxury. I too want that for my family. Nneoma, tell the people where they can reach out, because sometimes you start a business and you have to attract people to it, or sometimes people just ask for what they need. And you're like, you know what? There's an audience here and I'm going to serve this audience. And I want to say that I want to pay you to help me out. So if people are listening, how can they find you? How can we elicit all of your expertise to help us?
So yeah, I'm on Instagram at Point Your Trip, like Point Your Trip, one word. I need to resurrect the account, but that's where I would generally post those tips, and that's where you can find me. Please ask me any questions. I do love talking about points and miles. I might be introverted, but points and mile makes me a little more extroverted. And I just want to remind everyone, just see almost every expense you have as a point earning opportunity. You already have those expenses. So how do you get a silver lining out of it? It's okay to eat your cake and have it in this scenario.
Love that. Thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. I really appreciate this. This was fun.
All right. Now it is time for some fun money. Alicia, we know that you're traveling. Tell us, what else are you doing with your money for fun?
Yeah, so spending it on other people. I tell you, man, I got so many friends and family members. Every time I look up, it's somebody's birthday. And I am like, I'd love to celebrate my friends, but this is not a cheap hobby. Just last weekend, I had one of my best friends come in town. Her birthday is coming up. She was in the mood for sushi. And so I took her out to a nice sushi dinner for her birthday. The next day, it was my nephew's birthday. And so I ended up buying him a few gifts and celebrating him at his 1-year-old birthday party. And so, yeah, I've been spending a lot of money on birthday gifts and birthday dinners.
I just really love that you love people so much that you buy nice gifts and you're so thoughtful. I, on the other hand, am spending money on myself. So my fun money is I've been buying new outfits and I'm not a person who shops a lot, honestly. But recently I've just felt the need to upgrade. I'm either in sweats or like looking super fancy. Like there's no in between for me. So if summertime comes, it's going to be sweat shorts instead of sweatpants. My gosh. But recently I've been looking for some new outfits because I have these conferences and few speaking engagements as well. And I want to look good. I want to feel comfortable in the skin that I'm in and the clothes, the fabrics that I'm in. And my typical kind of go-to conference attire is now starting to wear a bit. Now, these are fabrics that I've held up for almost a decade. So it was a great investment. So I'm just looking for some that are stylish, affordable, classic, timeless fit. So that's what I've been doing. I've been spending a little bit of money on some new outfits.
I love it. Before you came on here and you were telling us how you were getting your outfits custom made, I need to just upgrade to your level. I know you were trying to keep your seamstress contact under wraps, but we're going to get that info up out of you sooner or later. Let us know what outfits you end up purchasing. I feel like you have really good style. So you got to let us know where you buying them from. Give us the plug. Are there certain stores that are your go-tos? Like, where do you go when you're buying a new outfit?
I buy clothes at TJ Maxx too, right? So I guess it really depends, but I really like the fit of Ann Taylor. So that's been a place that I've gone to. I also like J. Crew. One of my good friends, she made these recommendations like, oh, girl, I can't afford your recommendations. Or maybe I could afford it, but I'll just be buying one thing. It won't be a full outfit. But recently I was in New Jersey for a conference and I met this designer who's based in New Jersey. And I really like some of her designs. So I'm going to support her as well. I haven't purchased anything yet. So I'll let you all know after I purchase it and to understand the fit and to understand the style and all of that. But I would love to just support local people who I know their values align with mine and I know exactly where my dollar is going. So that's another place. So I'll be shopping locally. So once I purchase from there, I try it on. If I love it, if the fabrics hold up, then I'll let you all know because I want to share her with our audience.
Ooh, okay. Well, we will hold you to it and take photos of yourself. Let us know how you're looking. So that will be great. All right. Hopefully, everyone found some gems that they collected throughout this conversation with Dr. Nneoma. I know she was going tip after tip. I had to write some notes to keep track of everything. And so it wouldn't surprise me if you had to do the same. It might actually benefit you to listen back. Maybe you'll catch something the second time that you didn't catch the first time. And if you want more of these episodes, shoot us an email. Let us know if you're really enjoying our conversations on points and miles and how we can travel more affordably. So thanks for all you do. Do not forget to reach out to PKA Insurance Group if you are somebody who is looking to get disability insurance or life insurance, or maybe you already have those policies and you just need to make sure that you have the right policy for you. Things change in our lives and maybe you can get it for a discount. Maybe you can get it for a better deal. And so reach out to Pradeep Otto and his team at PKA Insurance Group because they might actually help you get a discount and get it more affordably. So thanks again for all you do. And we cannot wait to come back to you again next week.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.